Welcome back to the Constitutional Clarion. Another question that's often asked about the voice referendum is, well, why do we need a voice in the Constitution when we already have quite a number of members of Parliament who are Indigenous? So let me give you an answer to that. Well, at least 4 different answers to that. And the first one, and I guess the most important, is that members of Parliament are elected to represent their particular electorate or their state or territory if they're a senator. They're there to represent all the people of that electorate and or state or territory, and that's a really demanding job. Their role is not to be there professionally as a representative of Indigenous people. Second point is that the members of Parliament who are already elected, who are Indigenous, won't necessarily always be there. There may be times in the future where there doesn't happen to be so many members of Parliament who happen to be Indigenous. I mean, people will be elected for other reasons, like the political party that they represent, the policies that they propose. And so they may or may not be there in the future. There's no guarantee. Third reason is just because you happen to be Indigenous does not mean you have the cultural authority to represent your own Indigenous group or indeed any other Indigenous group in the nation, and there are very many of them. And the final point, the fourth point, is that for anyone to genuinely be able to represent Indigenous people across this nation, they would need to have some kind of an organisation or a structure which had roots that went out to all the different communities around Australia so that you could get information from them about how various laws were affecting them and various policies, because they do all live in different situations. People who live in urban areas have very different needs from people who live in regional areas or really remote areas. And so you'd need some kind of an organisation with, staff and resources to be able to get all that information and be able to process and then send it across into the Parliament and the executive government in order to be able to properly represent Indigenous people across the whole country. And that indeed is the entire purpose of the voice. It is to have that kind of an organisation with the capacity to do that. That is something well beyond the capacity of any individual member of Parliament to be able to achieve. They simply don't have the staff or the resources or the capacity to properly represent Indigenous people across the whole of Australia. So that's the reason, or the 4 reasons, why the mere fact that we do have a number of members of Parliament who are Indigenous is not enough to say that we don't need a voice in the Constitution to make representations to Parliament and the Executive. Hope you found that interesting and useful, and I will see you next time on the Constitutional Clarion. Goodbye.